Hey, welcome to Many Roads Traveled, and I am your virtual tour guide, I suppose, on my 30,000-mile road trip from Paris to Cape Town. So thank you so much for tuning in. Okay, we're on episode 20. So today's episode is about one of the scariest times I've ever had in my 30 years of traveling, and it is lucky that I am still alive, to be honest. So this episode we'll be talking about a truck accident that I was in the mountains in Ethiopia. Let's pick up where we left off in the last episode. And obviously if this is your first episode, then yeah, join me on episode 1 and come along for the whole trip. Okay, so it's day 122. And I'm still traveling with my friend Casey, who I left with. It was his trip, his idea that he talked me into this. Anyways, so yeah, after a horrendous night from my previous episode of being covered in bed bugs and flea bites, freaking out and having to buy a bucket of water and wash in this decrepit old shed that didn't have an attached door with cockroaches scuttling around my feet. And then getting back to the room and being kept up till 2 in the morning with blaring music. That's great. So we were up at 5:30, so needless to say, not much sleep at all. And back then in Ethiopia, especially up there, up north Ethiopia in the mountains, there literally was like one big flatbed truck that left a day. That was it. You either got on it and went somewhere else or you stayed put. So we get on this truck, and like I said, it's like another like 2-ton flatbed trucks. There must have been, I don't know, between 65 to 75 people packed on the back of this truck. Like the only room you had, so I was on the far back left corner sitting on my backpack. That's all the room you had. And Casey was on the opposite, so he's in the right hand back corner sitting on his backpack. Now, I'm super tired and everything. And so, yeah, we left just after 5:30. And I had just thrown like a jacket over my head because it's so dusty as well. So you get super dirty. And then all these bites I had, which I was covered in, they were starting to get infected as well. So that's not good, especially with my rare blood illness, because any kind of external infection can go bad fast, like as in turning to septicemia. So I was also worried about that. Anyways, and I had my Walkman on, because remember, this is back in 1993, and so it was the old tape cassettes and Walkman. So I had my headphones on, jacket over my head, very bumpy road because it's all just dirt roads, obviously, and the roads are really narrow, and the mountains are high. The mountains are between probably 3.5 to 4,500 meters, and the roads are super narrow, of course, very windy. There's no guardrails. That's crazy. They're so narrow, like barely a truck, like 2 vehicles could pass each other, basically, like one coming one way, the other coming another way. They literally had to pull right over to the side of the mountain for that to happen. We're traveling along for hours and hours, and I was sitting beside 2 young local guys who were, pretty nice. Not many, I don't know if anyone even spoke English on the truck. And as I've said in the last episode, there was hardly any, no Westerners about, especially that part of Ethiopia, because back then it was illegal to cross into Ethiopia. You had to fly in, but then you could travel and leave by land, but come in by land. And we were coming from Eritrea. Anyways, so I don't know, 6 hours or so later, I kind of came up for air. So I took this coat off my head and took my headphones out and just kind of had a look around. And we were on this really steep part of the mountain. And we just came around this corner, and the truck went to change gears, and nothing happened. It was like a clunk, and nothing happened. Next thing you know, we are starting to roll back very quickly, and it's like I said, it's about 3,500 meters sheer drop off either the side or the end of the road, like the mountain. I just oh my God! And also on top of the truck, there's 2 roll bars. So the highest roll bar, I would say it was at least 8 to 10 feet off the ground high. So once we start rolling back and picking up speed, like panic started setting into everyone, and people were scrambling, and two guys jumped off the side of the truck. And I'm like, my gut just said, get off the truck, because I was convinced that this thing was going over and everyone would be dead. So I'm on top of the roll bar. Now, there's only about 5 to 6 feet at the side of the road. So even if you jump, you gotta nail it. Otherwise, you're gonna bloody go off the side of the cliff. It was just like, oh my God. So just as I was about to jump, a guy jumped ahead of me, but he jumped directly behind the truck. And I watched him get run over, and he literally had, like, broke his leg. Like, the bone was like his femur bone was coming through his jeans. Like, it was brutal. So I'm like, okay, it won't do that. So I just got to nail the side. And honestly, it felt like I was in the air for 10 minutes. So I jumped, and I just knew I had to try and land with on my feet. So I managed to do that, but of course my legs kicked out after, like my feet kicked out from me, and like cracked my head on the road and really cut my back open. But as I'm laying there, I turned, and luckily, oh my gosh, the driver had some sense about him, and he drove into the side of the mountain and rolled the truck to stop it, with maybe 25, 30 feet till the end of the road. And Casey, like I said, he was on the right side corner, and I was in the back corner. And that's where all the weight went. Like, I could see my backpack just get crushed. The two guys, young guys, like early 20s, sitting next to me, got, like, the truck rolled on them. Like, the roll bars, they were underneath that. So they had all that weight on them. People are just like screaming and crying, and it's just crazy. Like, there's 70 people, 75 people just going nuts. Plus there's this guy on the road with his broken legs, like leg bones sticking through. But Casey hadn't seen me jump off, and like I said, all the weight was right on that corner where I was sitting. So I was just frozen. Like, I was just in shock, and I couldn't even say anything. And I was quite far up, like probably 50 feet in front of where the truck landed. So I see Casey, and he's like he's screaming for me. He's trying to, like, move people to see where the hell I am. And he finally, like, because where I should have been, I wasn't there. So he was like looking all over, and then he finally saw me up the road, and he came running up. Oh my God. Like, and like, we just hugged each other and started crying, and I was shaking, and oh my God, it was just brutal. Like, yeah. And even talking about it now, like, it's 20 odd years later, it still is, yeah, like, it's clear as a bell. So after a couple of minutes, we went back to the truck to try and help people, and I knew CPR. So I went to the two guys sitting next to me first, and the one guy, I mean, he had blood coming out of his nose, his ears, like, and sadly, he died. And then the second guy, I was checking his pupils. I was, trying to talk to him, and he died about 20 minutes later. It was just so sad. And like, if I hadn't jumped off, I would have been dead, 100%. Or if I had still had my headphones on and the coat over my head, I wouldn't even know what was happening. Like, I would have been dead. So count my lucky stars, and listening to your gut is so important. Always listen to your gut. Anyway, so then I went to the guy with the broken leg. There's lots of other people with minor injuries. And Casey got his first aid kit. So we were literally putting like Band-Aids on people with gashes, or because we didn't know what to do. And no one spoke English either. So it was pretty tricky. So I went to the guy with the broken leg, and just trying to stabilize it. And, I was asking people to try and find sticks or something like that so I could wrap it up and keep it, semi-stable. So all the men kind of righted, like, they rocked the truck, and then they righted the truck back up. And then they started carrying the injured people back on the truck. And then all the women and children got on. And then they were telling us to get back on the truck. I was like, no way am I getting back on that truck. You kidding me? Like, the brakes just went. Like, no way. So we didn't know what to do. Like, and because we're in the middle now, it's like midday, hot African blazing sun on us. We had no water left. Didn't even know how far the next village was or town or anything. And then people just started walking up. Like, the ones that didn't get back on the truck, they just started walking down the road. And so I guess, like, Casey and I are like, well, I guess that's what we're gonna have to do. But honestly, it was like, I don't know how how long I can do this case, because I was exhausted from the night before. My illness was kicking in. My head and my back started hurting, like once the adrenaline went down. And my backpack weighed about 22 kilos. So I'm like, I don't know how far I could walk, man. But there was even nowhere to camp or anything like that. Like, we're in the mountains. So we just kind of started off. And then my two little saviors, these two little, like, young cat, like, literally they're about 14 or 15 cattle boys, because it works kind of like shepherds, just came up over the ridge. Like, they climbed up the mountain, over the ridge, and they saw what happened. And they kind of, I think they spoke a little bit of English, and they were like, oh, we'll show you a shortcut. Come with us. Well, then they just start going straight, like, rather than going the road, which goes around the mountains, they start just going, like, up, I don't know, a goat trail or something. So it's even more narrow and steep because you're going straight up, and it was very rocky. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to die again. Like, this is, I've got this 50-pound backpack on my back too. So bless one of the guys, the boys, he took my backpack. He wore my backpack for me. Casey kind of split up his backpack. So I put some of his stuff in a day pack, and the other guy, I carried that for him. And then after walking about half an hour or so, we came across literally a puddle on the road. And with my water filter, we were able to drink some clean water. So after that, I felt a little bit better. So yeah, I think we walked for at least 2 hours to the next little village. And we didn't have any money either. Like, we had like 31 beer, which is the local currency, which was equivalent to about $4. Because we were planning on going to the bank when we got to Gondor, the next big town. So I had a baseball hat. So I gave that to my guy, and he was thrilled. Like, he was so happy. He was wearing that with pride. So, but I don't know what I would have done without those two guys, those two boys that help us, man. It was just crazy. Like, I was still in shock, thinking how close I was to dying, and then felt, really sad for the two young guys that died. Oh my gosh. So anyways, we get to this next village, and of course, everyone had heard about the accident. So we're waiting there for a couple hours. Luckily, some nice ladies came over and gave us some tea. And, when they were giving, like, like half hugs and like, are you okay, kind of thing. And so, yeah, about 2 hours later, this truck rolls up, which looks exactly the same as the truck we were just on. And they're just like, herded everyone back on this truck. And so again, it's just jam packed. And me and Casey were just like, we just did not want to get on this truck, because we kind of thought it might have been the same truck as well. I'd gone to the next village, dropped off those people, and came back. Probably what it was. But we had no choice. It was like, well, we stay in this little village with no money, nowhere to stay, or we get out of the truck and suck it up. So that's what we did. But like I said, it was jam-packed. And we didn't even get to sit this time. So Casey and I were just standing beside each other, overlooking this, 4,000 meter drop for 45 minutes. And I just kept thinking, like, I can't do that again. So you just sleep thinking of an escape plan, and I just was like, I can't do it again. Yeah, so I just kept thinking, please brakes, don't break again. So we left Barburg, which is this little village, and headed to Barburg, a bigger town. Well, it's still pretty small. So yeah, it took us about an hour to get there, of just being, like I said, looking down at this drop and just freaking out, basically. But we did it, and we got to Barburg, and again, like, everyone knew what had happened, and like I said, we were the only two Westerners there. Possibly the only two Westerners that they'd seen for a long time, too. So we found a hotel, and like I said, we had 31 beer, like BIR, the Ethiopian currency, and we found a hotel, which was 20 beer, and then it was 11 beer for us to get the truck to Gondor, which was a couple hours, and that was like the biggest town. So we had zero money for food. But luckily, the two ladies who ran the hotel were just so sweet, and they brought us some boiled eggs and some tea and just lots of TLC. And then Casey, he cleaned and sterilized my back, because like I said, I had a massive graze on there, and I had a huge goose egg on my head where my head cracked on the road, as well as I probably had a little bit of whiplash on my neck too. And then I got my period as well. So happy days. Anyways, we ate. We went to sleep at 4 p.m. and woke up at 8 a.m. because it was just like I said, it was just a ridiculously crazy day, and I was just so thankful because all I kept thinking about during that whole time was my family receiving a telegram from the Canadian Embassy saying your daughter's body it's on its way. Like, she died in a truck accident. Like, that just would have been brutal. But anyways, I'm not particularly religious, but I definitely had some guardian angels looking out for me that day, for sure. Especially, as well as sending the two boys, too, to help us. Anyway, so on day 123, I was all one day. Like about a week. Yeah, so we got up, like I said, we got up at 8. And again, the ladies brought us some breakfast for free, too, bless them. Yeah, went to the bus station, and we waited for about an hour. We used up the rest of our money. And it was literally like a rugby scrum to get on this bus, to get a seat, because there's just so many people jammed. Like, you got to use your elbows. Oh my God. Casey luckily got a 2-seater, like 2 seats out of a 3-seat. But I was at the first, I was in the aisle, and because it was so, like, even people were standing in the aisle, like, it was packed. And again, first thing I think, okay, escape route. How do I get out of here? But after about an hour, because people were leaning on me and my back was really sore, my head and neck, and so luckily Casey changed seats with me, so I had the middle seat because I was about to lose it. So that was a bit better. And then it took like about, I think, 4 hours to get to Gondor from there. So we got to Gondor, and 2 guys met us at the bus station, Indishut and Daniel, and they took us to find a cheap hotel, which was only 4 beer a night. And then we went to go to the bank because, we're like, we need some money, man. Now, of course, by the time we got to Gondor, the banks were closed. It was a Friday, and they weren't open until Monday. So it's like, awesome. Luckily, Casey had $20 in cash, which was the last of his cash. So he changed that, although we got a crappy rate. We only got 5 beer to the dollar rather than 7.5 beer, which we had been getting. We got our hotel room, which is called Cinema Hotel, which was, it's fine. Our usual cheap and dingy. And then Daniel took us to a government restaurant, and we had like our first proper meal in days, and they had spaghetti, which was super nice. So we had dinner, and then Daniel, who was like this, I had my doubts about him. Again, gut instinct. Casey really liked him. But he was kind of like a 27-year-old, bit of a washout who looked about 47. Definitely Mr. Party Animal. So after dinner, he took us to somewhere where you could buy chut, which chut is this plant, which is very, very popular in Ethiopia, and Rastas use it as well. So you just chew on these leaves, and you kind of get you get a buzz off of it, like a rush. But you're not supposed to swallow any of that because it can make you sick. So we went back to our room, got a couple Pepsis, and went back to our room and chewed chut for a couple hours. I didn't get a buzz at all. I just felt sick. So it didn't really do it for me. And then Daniel took us to this. So in Ethiopia, there's houses, and they'd have flags outside their house. And the yellow flags, chemical tej. The white flags meant natural tej. Yeah, so tej is a honey wine. It's like a mead. And it is very popular in Ethiopia and Eritrea. And the alcohol content is usually between 7 to 11%. And it's usually just made out of 3 ingredients, which is honey, water, and a medicinal shrub called gesho. But I guess if you got a chemical one, it had some other chemical in there. I don't know what it was. We tended to go for the natural ones. And you just go into people's like homes. It's their front room is kind of, they turn into a bar. And then the tej is served. It almost looks like chemistry beakers. Like when you get in chemistry class, these beakers. So like wide bottoms and then, very thin, narrow tops. It's very bizarre. But it was quite tasty, actually, especially the natural ones. We did try chemical one. No, it did taste chemically. So the natural ones were pretty good. So yeah, so we're just drinking tej. See, we're very responsible with our $20, right? A couple beakers of those. And then Daniel's like, oh, we got to come check out this disco party house. We're like, okay. So we go there, and again, it's someone's house, but they've tin foiled the front room and have lights, like Christmas lights hanging down. And then the music is blaring out of, like, 90s ghetto blaster, but it's very tinny African music. And lots of drunk people and who can't dance at all, which I was surprised at. There's like no rhythm. I'm like, what is going on? Anyways, we stayed there. So we had a couple of Ethiopian joints, which was quite nice. And then about 1 o'clock, I was like, okay, I am exhausted. I'm crashing. I think I just went by myself. Casey stayed out with Daniel. But anyways, I think that is a wrap for this episode. It's exhausting just talking about it. So to hear if I was right about Daniel or Casey was, and oh my gosh, there's more to come. Trust me, in Ethiopia, and find out what happened to us in Gondar to next Thursday's episode. Okay, but before I go, of course, it's time for Tam's Top Tips. Okay, so tip number 1 would have to be listen to your gut. It is always right. And if I hadn't listened to mine, I wouldn't be here right now. So especially when you're traveling, listen to your gut for sure. And maybe when you're in transport, look for an escape plan. You never know when you might need one. Okay, tip number 2. Now, the mountains I'm talking about are called the Simeon Mountains. And you can do apparently like beautiful hikes up there. I mean, it is beautiful country. Like, I forgot to mention that. But yeah, so give you like 3-day hikes. And also the Simeon Mountains were given a UNESCO World Heritage badge or whatever it is in 1979. So if you go for the hikes, you will see lots of baboons and other wildlife, especially Galada monkeys. And for 3 days, you're looking at least $170 US, but that's for 4 to 6 people. And if you book it in Gondar. And then tip number 3, listen to my last episode to learn about visas and stuff like that for Ethiopia. So the daily budget for a backpacker budget is probably around $35 US a day. Obviously, if you book more tours and stuff like that and travel by, flying, then it'll be more. And then my tip for women is, well, Ethiopia is fairly safe. And you don't have to worry too much about dress code. Obviously, just dress respectfully, not short little mini skirts and showing too much skin. Probably be a lot easier in your life for sure. Ethiopia is a patriarchal society, so you'll probably still get some kind of sexist comments and things like that. I'm not sure if the staring is as to the degree as it was back then when I was there, because it was crazy. It was like, I felt like I was a #1 Hollywood blockbuster star. They just didn't see many Westerners and or white people there 30 years because of the war. So be prepared for that. I think that's a wrap for this episode. So make sure you subscribe, please. Okay, so we'll see you next Thursday. And like always, you can find more info on my website, manyroadstravel.com. Okay, so until next Thursday, safe travels, one road at a time.